What's going on, Eagles fans? Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast for NJ.com. This is Cayden Steele, and joining me, as always, will be my co-host, Brookover. We're a week into training camp now, which means we have a better feel for some of these position battles going on, and we've been able to evaluate who's been playing well and, frankly, who hasn't been playing well. But before we break down everything that we saw at practice this past week, this episode is going to be brought to you by Penco Tech. With two convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey, and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step by going to pencotech.edu. Okay, Bob, we've been out at training camp for a week now. Today is an off day, but it gives us some time to think about everything we observed from the training camp battles, from some of the guys that have impressed us individually. Let's start out with the training camp battles. And while, yes, it may be too early to declare a winner, and we can't really do that, we can give you our early thoughts on what we've seen. And for me, the most intriguing battle has been the cornerback battle. And yesterday, Vic Fangio made some interesting comments. I believe, Bob, it started with a question from you, or you might have had the follow up, actually. Where first, Vic kind of just, said Adoree played pretty well on Monday, which he did. He had a pass breakup on Terrence Marshall. He had really good coverage on A.J. Brown. So I gave him a little bit, of his flowers to start off with. Then it started to get a little more interesting, where basically he said he had no say in signing Adoree Jackson. That was a Howie Roseman decision. He didn't watch any film. And then even went farther to say, Adoree hasn't been able to earn a contract extension from Tennessee. And he hasn't, really – it didn't really pay off in New York either with a long-term deal. And just he went more and more and more, and just the fact that, this is an opportunity for him to prove, what type of player he is or isn't, which I found interesting. And then he talked about Kelee Ringo as well, talking about that he thinks he's just been fine, he's in good shape, and it's really just, his first opportunity to win a starting job. But so far, Adoree Jackson, of, the 5 practices we have seen, he started out with the first team 3 times. Kelee Ringo has started out 2 times. So it's been a little bit of Adoree Jackson over Kelee Ringo in terms of reps. But then yesterday, Kelee Ringo was back at the leaderboard running with the first team defense more than Adoree. What's your early thoughts on what we've seen and just Vic Fangio's comments yesterday?
I'm going to start with in defense of Adoree Jackson a little bit. You know, he's getting a chance. He's obviously getting a chance, and he's been running with the ones, and he ran with the ones more. I wasn't there on Monday, but a lot apparently on Monday, and quite a bit on Tuesday too. Although I think Kelee Ringo ran in a little bit more. It was hard to tell while I was trying to keep from passing out from that heat. Vic Fangio also said heat is what was his quote?
Mentality or like something along
Yeah,
those lines,
that it
or
wasn't real. Basically, it's just all in your mind.
yeah.
Well, bull crap, Vic. I can tell you as a human meltdown, as I was having my human meltdown. That's a bunch of crap. But anyway, I did admire the fact that he went out in sweatpants and a sweatshirt and went through the whole practice in that gear. But in defense of, back to my original point, in defense of Adoree Jackson in 2020 with the Titans, he suffered a serious knee injury. Only played 3 games that year. Had been playing very well for the Titans up to that point, who were a playoff team. He was a playoff caliber cornerback who played pretty good football for the Titans. Got hurt. I think he was a little bit of a cap casualty after 2020. Went to the Giants, and again played very, very well especially his first 2 years with the Giants. I covered his second and part of his third season with the Giants. In 2022, he also got hurt in the middle of that season, but came back for the playoffs. One of the most impressive cornerback games I've seen a player play was him against Justin Jefferson. He traveled with Justin Jefferson in a playoff game. I think he held Jefferson to like 66 yards. The Giants upset the Vikings in Minnesota to move on to where they got crushed by the Eagles the following week. But regardless, played very well there. And then last year, Dory, by all accounts, was not playing great. Although Pro Football Focus, he graded out pretty well with Pro Football Focus, but eventually he was benched toward the end of the season. I still think part of that benching last year was just the Giants saying, "Hey, we stink. We need to look at younger guys." At that point, eventually came back. They were not very good, and he ended up having to come back and play more. But uh, so my point is that Adore is a better player maybe than Vic's given him credit for. What Adore hasn't done is win, and he hasn't gotten that. Uh, he got a long term deal from the Giants, and he has gotten a long term deal. He wasn't playing on all 1 year deals during his career, but
Yeah.
he's a capable cornerback. The question is, he's now 29, 30 years old, I guess. He turns 30 in September. So he's at that point in his career. To me, this is the bigger issue than what he hasn't proven anything. Is that he's 30 years old. He was kind of looked like maybe it's near the end of the Giants last year. Now he's got a chance to come and do something with a Super Bowl caliber team and really rejuvenate his career here. And that to me is the bigger thing. Can he do that while being challenged by a guy who's eager to get him work his way into the starting lineup with a bunch of other Georgia Bulldogs? Keely's a great athlete, but Keely has to prove he can be a starting cornerback in this league. Hasn't done that yet. So, you know, that's where the battle stands at. A lot of people are making a big deal out of uh, what Vic said about Adoree. I don't think that's that big a deal. I don't think it's going to bother Adoree Jackson. Having covered Adoree, I know it's not going to bother Adoree Jackson. He doesn't care about that kind of stuff. He's very in tune to just doing what he's supposed to do on the field. Um, we'll see how it goes from here. But to your point, it's probably the number one interesting competition right at this point, and I'm eager to see where it goes from here. And it's fun that we have this.
Yeah, and I've wondered what you know, and I'm not sure what to make of it either. How big of a deal is Vic's comments? But is it Vic in a way trying to motivate Dory, and this is just the way he's going about it, or is this how Vic is with certain players when he's blunt about guys that maybe he's not on as high on. He's not afraid to show his feelings or the way he feels about a player. I am curious about the intention of what he said. Perhaps we are, blowing out of proportion a little bit, but neither endorsement or neither player really yesterday got an endorsement from Vic Fangio. Um, I'm not sure who's going to separate from the pack. Honestly, I think Adoree's been a little bit better in training camp. Monday's practice, like Vic gave him some credit for, was pretty good. He locked up, AJ Brown a couple times. Terrace Marshall, who's a lot bigger than Adoree Jackson is. He went up for 50-50 ball, ripped it right out of his hands. Yesterday was a little worse. Got a flag for getting beat by Jahan Dotson deep, kind of pulled. There were some other times I saw him giving up some separation. But overall, I think he's been better than Keely. And then for Keely's sake, the flashes are there. I mean, and it's not like he's getting beat terribly in coverage other than the first practice last week on Wednesday where Terrace Marshall beat him over the top. But, I mean, a lot of it's been going against A.J. Brown where he's been in position, but he hasn't turned his head or he's been a little too slow to react. And he's gotten beaten by inches going against A.J. Brown. So, Keely, you feel like the upside is definitely there, but like you just said, Bob, is he ready to be an NFL starting corner? He's still extremely young. He came into the NFL young, and it's a tough position to play. I'm curious what they're going to do here. Do they go with the veteran guy um, that they know has played a lot of snaps in the NFL, but maybe he is towards the back end, or do they let Keeley go out there the first few months and live with the fact that he might get beat sometimes because he is inexperienced, and maybe the technique isn't fully there yet, and he has a long, he still has some ways to go before the technique matches, the physical
Well, and
gifts.
the other thing here, and I want to make 2 points here, is while we're on the subject, you know, just because somebody has the job at the start of the season uh, doesn't mean they're going, or the start of training camp doesn't mean they're going to maintain it. Bryce Huff is an example. And I'll get to this part in a second. But he started the first 3 games of last season and 4 of the first 5, and through the first 6 weeks was playing roughly 30 snaps, and then he just kind of disappeared. And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, you know, he wasn't a Vic guy to begin with," but he got the chance and he didn't prove it. And Vic, eventually just said, "You know what? I'm going to go a different direction here." And basically, his different direction was mostly making Brandon Graham play a lot more than at that point in the season, making Brandon Graham play a lot more than we thought he was going to play, and eventually it evolved into Nolan Smith and J.Alex Hunt becoming a lot more integral part of the defense than maybe we expected them to be at the beginning of the season. So these things do evolve as the year goes on. Um, I did find the comments about he was more a Howie guy than my guy interesting, but
Yeah.
only to the extent that Howie's at this point is very comfortable in his skin. Knows that Vic did a great job for this defense last year, but also knows that he's been pretty good at evaluating talent, especially since he came back from his Chip Kelly enforced exile. He's done a great job at evaluating talent. So, but he's gotten some wrong, as all GMs do, but he's comfortable with that. So whatever was said there was said. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the George's here right now. He's competing for this job, uh, and as long as he's playing well, he's got a great chance of winning the job. But Keely Ringo's still certainly in the running too. It's going to go. It's going to go into the season in determining who's going to be out on the field, and the other part of that is always you need the depth. So it's helping both guys get better this competition for when we get to the season, because we saw last year you're not going to be able to rely on your starters all the time. It's why Isaiah Rodgers has a nice contract now. Was able to leave the Eagles and get a nice new contract, the best contract of his career, because he had to end up playing, even though he didn't win a competition last year. He ended up playing and getting quite a bit of reps, quite a bit of snaps. And those are things that are going to be needed for this season too.
Yeah, and you made a great point that whoever starts training camp, or whoever starts a year may not be the starter. They can always adjust. We saw him do it, like you said, with the edge rush group last year, and maybe at corner, you start the season early on, whether it's Keely or Dory, and you don't feel comfortable with those guys on the outside. Obviously, you could switch one for the other, or I mean, we've seen Cooper DeJean in the base package run with some safety looks, but he's also been out at outside corner as well. So if it's one of those situations where you don't feel confident in your outside corners and you think DeJean can be an upgrade over them, which I do think he possibly could be. Maybe you move to Gene to the outside, and you got Mac McWilliams, who I think's had a really strong start to camp. And yes, he's a 5th-round rookie, and it's a little bit of a projection. But if you did believe that he could be the nickel, maybe that's an alternative. Or Drew Makuba played some nickel in college, and it wasn't necessarily his strength. He was a better safety than nickel, but he's shown the capability of being able to play nickel. And maybe you could patchwork things together a little bit with DeJean outside cornerback and figure out some rotation inside at nickel if you don't believe in the outside guys. But I don't know if they'll get to that point. I mean, I'm still confident that Keely Ringo has upside, and maybe it's just going to take a little bit of time. But the one the one battle that maybe isn't going the way that we thought, and it's probably because of injury, and we'll see how it goes now. But I'm really thinking that Sidney Brown, because of Drew Makuba's injury, is has the leg up in the safety room. Do you feel the same way? Just the fact that Makuba's missed two practice, we really don't know the timeline of his return, and this is valuable time for a safety to get these reps in training camp. And this is Sidney Brown's third year, and he's the second year in Fangio's defense now. He's healthy. He looks pretty confident out there. And I'm starting to think that Sidney Brown might end up being the starter here, at least week one, and maybe early in the season for like the first month.
Yeah, again, that's going to depend on how serious this injury is. If it keeps Makuba out for a while, I could see. Yes, I mean, Vic's quote about it during OTAs was that was something that's probably going to go deep into training camp. That battle, um, and maybe it does. Uh, but there's so much training camp. It's so hard to make any kind of opinions after 1 week. They've only been in pads one day, and that's really when the evaluating starts taking place. So much of it will depend on how quickly Makuba can come back. But if it does become extended, I mean, the example we saw a season ago was Tyler Steen was, went into camp, which I think Drew Makuba did probably into this camp as the leader in the competition, or at least it was his job to lose, but there was a chance he could lose it, and he did because he was out an extended period. It gave Mekhi Becton an opportunity to show what he could do as a guard after not really playing that position his entire career. And Mekhi Becton has a ring, got a nice new contract, a ring. It became a great deal for Mekhi Becton. Um, but if Makuba's out a long time, this could become the chance that Sidney Brown's been waiting for. It's not like Sidney was like a seventh round pick or an undrafted guy. He was a third round pick. Makuba was a second round pick. So I mean, there's not that much difference in where they were drafted. Um, Vic downplayed any notion that Sidney Brown's NFL experience helps him at all in this competition, helps him that much because he said he hasn't been on the field enough for it to help him. But I do believe that it helps him in terms of just he knows he was around enough to know what the defense is all about last year. He's been around enough to know what it means to be an NFL player. Uh, he has a brother who, running back with the Bengals, who certainly he can bounce things off of in terms of playing the run game and things like that. So I do think Sidney Brown's NFL experience, although not much on the field, there was quite a bit on the field as a rookie, um, more than people realize, I think. So I do think Sidney's experience really helps him, and if Drew Makuba is going to be sidelined for a while, that's his position to claim. And I'll go back to this stuff because you just mentioned it with the options, and Vic addressed this too. One of the other options is that in the base defense, Cooper DeJean at safety, and then that is going to limit that part of it. Although Cooper's going to be on the field, I mean, by the looks of it, more as a slot corner than anything else. But should they decide that he's benefits the team most as a safety, that possibility is still there too.
Yeah, and Vic said, really that decision comes down to basically who does he feel more confident in, Sidney Brown, Drew Makuba, or Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson for the base package of
Right.
for if
And
Cooper
others are
going to
going to make that decision probably
yeah
more than Cooper.
yeah yeah, so Cooper is going to be on the field no matter what, and maybe that is that safety. You don't want to take Cooper DeJean off the field at all. He's one of the most intriguing players in the NFL now on the defensive side of all the different things that he could do. He's a true weapon. When it comes to Sidney Brown, Though the biggest factor, I mean, yes, the experience helped, and like you said, the fact that he knows how to be an NFL player. I mean, he knows Vic's defense, but he wasn't healthy last year. He talked about it when he met with reporters, um, and he pretty much said like his knee never truly felt healthy. His knee never truly felt healthy, and it took him about a year and a half to really feel that way. It was bothering him last season, and he was behind on reps. And I mean, it's tough to really uh, crack through the lineup. I know a lot of people made a big deal of him being behind Tristan McCollum last year, but I mean, Sidney Brown just wasn't right last year. We saw some flashes as a rookie, and yeah, I'm not counting him out, but if Drew Makuba gets back, he should be right back in the fight. And if not, maybe this is kind of like last year's situation where uh, I know it's a little different because Cooper DeJean got hurt before training camp working out, but maybe this is a situation if Makuba does miss, multiple weeks, 2, 3 weeks, where Vic isn't comfortable playing him right away, and maybe it's Sidney Brown's job for the first month, and then if Sidney Brown is not performing well or giving them a cap to their ceiling, kind of like Avonte Maddox did last year at nickel, maybe there's a switch with Makuba going in for Brown. So this is really fluid, but I do think it makes it fun. I mean, the secondary it's new. You get Mitchell back and Eugene back, but you got moving pieces, and we really don't know what it's going to look like. There's so many different combinations for their base and nickel package, and I'm excited to see it. That's the thing on defense that has me the most intrigued. Obviously, there's other areas of concern or interest, but the secondary and how it's going to play out, replacing Darius Slay, replacing CJ Gunnar Johnson, and whether their decisions to get rid of those two players is going to come back to bite them. And I'm curious to see that. Bob, you were mentioning we were talking about the injury and how that could hurt Makuba, and you brought up Tyler Steen. That's the guy we're going to go to now because this year there doesn't seem to be a Mekhi Becton so far really emerging to even compete with Steen. He's gotten first team reps every single day, and although to me he's looked shaky at times, especially going against Camp Breakout and potential rising star Mora Jomo, yesterday got all the praise in the world from Jeff Stoutland, basically saying it was a big day for Tyler Steen, and he did look better yesterday. So to hear Stoutland say that means something. And then he also said basically he's just executing things that he's been preaching to him for a long time, and he's starting to see that. Tyler Steen got some snaps last year when injuries happen, and he looks solid at times, and it looks like that confidence and those extra years of working with Stoutland kind of in more of a reserve role is starting to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, the one guy who I think, and again, I think a key here is that the competitions they don't end when the season starts; they continue.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the one guy who looks like he is at least competing uh, with Tyler Steen is Matt Pryor. Um, but Tyler's gotten all the reps with the first team pretty much, and it's a much different situation than it was a season ago when he got hurt and he never really had a shot to really get back in there. But he had to play quite a bit. He had to play quite a bit in the NFC Championship game last year. He played a pretty good game that day, especially pass blocking. Um, it was a big learning year. But he's going to be challenged, continue to be challenged. And Jeff Stoutland, I'm sure he wants to pump him up and give him confidence right now. But he's going to have to earn it, and he's going to have to earn being able to stay there, stay healthy, and stay at the position. And the guy that everybody thought would challenge him, perhaps because they brought him in and he's a former first round pick like Mekhi Becton was Kenyon Green, and he was hurt coming out of the gate. Uh, there's been no indication whatsoever that he's going to be a threat to Tyler Steen at this point. So, yeah, I mean, as we sit here right now, I'd be surprised if Tyler Steen on opening night against the Cowboys was not the starting right guard, but he's going to have to continue to prove it. Um, and to me, Matt Pryor is the other guy who seems Matt Pryor seems to have established himself at the very least as being one of the reserve guys on this offensive line.
Definitely, and it helps that he's also taking some snaps at tackle, so he's got that versatility.
Right.
And if all else fails, in Tyler Steen, some reason uh, doesn't improve, for what we've seen early in his career, and he is a liability at some point during the season, they have that comfort that Matt Pryor probably can come in and maybe not give you, you know, great play, but just good enough possibly to get you by. And that's where it is. It's probably, similar to maybe, Keely Ringo, where the Eagles invested draft picks, a third round pick in Steen, a fourth round pick in 2023, and Keely Ringo, or early fourth round pick. They probably want these guys to win the job. And Tyler Steen, he has shown some ability, especially as a run blocker. He's been a little more spotty in pass protection, but there hasn't been a ton of snaps. It's hard to really tell what type of player he's going to be. But early on, it's been a slow start to his career. But I wonder if the path is going to be kind of similar to Isaac Seumalo, who kind of also started off slow as a guard, eventually found his way, became a really good starter for Jeff Stoutland, and maybe that's what happens for Tyler Steen. And yeah, like you said, Bob, it is time probably to eliminate Kenyon Green from that conversation. He's probably got an uphill battle to make this roster. I know they traded for him when they sent C.J. Gardner-Johnson to Houston, but he missed some time. Right now, he's mainly running with the third team offensive line. I wonder, what's his chances of making the roster? It's a guy that people were least intrigued with, and right now it seems like it's going to be difficult. And he would be one of those players that I would put in the. He's probably lost the most so far just because he missed early on, and right now he's kind of stuck. But that's what we're going to go into next. We talked about the training camp battles. They're still way too early to determine, and that's what really our eyes are going to be on for the next 3 weeks to see who wins these starting jobs. But let's talk about winners and losers, and maybe we shouldn't even call it losers, but maybe just the guys that have impressed us and the guys that we want to see more out of. Let's start with the guys who have impressed us so far through a week of practice, and keep in mind, one padded practice, so just because they've been good so far doesn't mean they'll be good for the rest of camp. But who's some of these guys that are just, Bob, when you look at them, are just catching your eye and you're like, wow?
Yeah, I think that list has to be topped by Quinyon Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Back for his second year, had a great rookie year, um, way beyond what I think anybody could have expected. Obviously he's a first round pick. You're hoping he's good, but he was better than good. He was great, and he comes back and looks even better. I mean, he's running with AJ Brown. He's unlike Keely Ringo, if he runs with AJ Brown and is in coverage, he's been able to knock the ball away. It's no shame getting beat by AJ Brown, especially on contested balls. AJ usually wins them. It's why he's one of the best in the NFL, if not the best. And Quinyon, stride for stride with him, has been terrific. So he would be at the top of my list.
Mm-hmm.
I always have a hard time judging edge rushers, but certainly the guy that has drawn major praise here in the early going is Jalix Hunt, from his teammates. Jordan Mailata out of the chute talked about how I had to go from Josh Sweat to Jalix Hunt, and he's drawn praise from a lot of people, although not from Vic Fangio, who, when asked if the kind of praise he was getting, Vic's quote was, "Did you have belly laughter after that?" Or so, he said he gave him that he finished very strong last year, but said he's a young player. Let's see where he goes from here. Um, gosh, Jordan Davis, another guy. You mentioned Ajoma before. Jordan Davis, another guy who slimmed down, finished strong last year. They're expecting more from this year with Milton Williams gone, and it looks like he's ready to do more. Jalen Carter, he came back, I guess, in the one practice, and I'm eager to see what he does in pads for the rest of camp. But I got to think he's really going to ascend here in this third year. He's already a great player, but I think there's even more there for him. You know, and to go to the offensive side of the ball just for a moment, I think Jahan Dotson has looked like more of a threat than he was a year ago. He looks like he's more comfortable in the offense. Yeah, I mean, we didn't even get to see him in training camp last year. He didn't join the team till the uh, end of camp and when the season was starting. He to me looks like he has kind of found a place. Yeah, I'll give two more offensive guys. Dallas Goddard to me has looked tremendous, and I just think that makes the offense look so much better when he's there. I'm actually going to give you two more beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what really impresses me
Ew.
is every time Saquon touches the ball,
Yeah.
he runs so hard, uh, and they'll be at like their own 40. And Saquon, it's what the coaches want him to do. But when you're Saquon Barkley, you just ran for 2,000 yards, you're your eighth year in the league. He still runs the end zone. I figure he's just practicing those 60-yard runs. And this is a good time to get in the 60-yard runs because he had more than anybody in NFL history last year. And then the one other person I was going to say was and this is a kind of off the radar guy, is Elijah Cooks. He's impressed 3 straight days now, made some terrific catches. I don't know what it's going to mean for him in terms of making a team, but there's always some surprise guys that make the team, and he's he's flashed, and that's a good thing when you're trying to make a team.
All of those choices are particularly, good. I agree with them, and yeah, the player with the best training camp so far, though, to me, and it's not close, is Quinton Mitchell. You mentioned the coverage on AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Uh, is those guys are difficult to cover, and Quinton Mitchell at times, he I don't want to say he makes it look easy, but I mean it just doesn't seem like it's too much for him. I mean, he's always in the right place. I mean, the one-handed interception on Monday, where AJ Brown was going on a go ball deep downfield on the right sideline. Quinton Mitchell, step for step, perfect coverage, no separation from AJ Brown. Turns his back when he noticed that the ball was a little underthrown by Jalen Hurts, and he one hand intercepts it and runs down the field, to pick up some yards after. That was the big thing about Quinton last year, was that the interceptions weren't coming. The coverage was good, but the numbers, weren't eye popping because he wasn't taking away the football as much. It happened a little bit in the playoffs, but it seems like an area that he's improved upon. But it's not just the deep routes where he's sticking to Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, but it's the stuff underneath. He's closing out really fast. He's instinctual. He's fast. I mean, he's got good size. We're talking about a player that they're playing on both sides. And Vic said, depending on the matchup, maybe they would travel him. And at least it seems like they're preparing for that possibility, and especially if they don't have any confidence or not as much confidence in who their cornerback two on the outside is going to be this year. Uh, Quinton Mitchell, number 9 on ESPN's rankings for top 10 corners in that poll of coaches, GMs, people around the league. Uh, the ceiling for him is absolutely tremendous. Wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if we're talking about him being, one of the best players on the Eagles, and continuing that, for the foreseeable future. He might be a true lockdown corner. And then on the defensive side, the guy that has impressed me the most, and I'm not sure what the role is going to be, because the other guy who's also been really impressive is Jahad Campbell, and I'm sure he's going to find a way on the field once he's proving to Vic that he's able to read and be comfortable inside the defense with diagnosing run and pass. But I mean, man, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. has looked a lot better this summer,
Yeah,
especially
that's a really good one.
especially in pass, like as a pass defender. I
Oh,
mean, the knock on him at Clemson was that he's a tough, like, downhill, can stop the run, but what is the athleticism? Can he cover guys? I mean that one like post route yesterday where he's on Dallas Goddard and just comes over and he's in perfect coverage and rips it right out of his hands. They're throwing screens out of the backfield to like Will Shipley and other running backs, and he's right there to meet him, putting a big hit. I mean, he seems like he's playing faster, and it seems like I'm going to say he's more athletic because I don't know if you could change that, but it seems like he just knows where to be at the right time in coverage. And like you talk about this linebacker core, Bob. I mean, if Nakobe Dean comes back healthy, this is Nakobe Dean, Jahad Campbell, Zach Bond, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. This might be the strength of this team in terms of depth, and that not even including Smile Money Jr., who I think's looked good at in a limited sample size so far, but he looks athletic. They have a ton of linebacker depth, and I mean, I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. can play. I don't know how he gets on the field, especially when Nakobe comes back, and but to me, this is a guy that in the 5th round looks, in my eyes, like a starting linebacker in the NFL. Maybe not for the Eagles, but he looks like a guy to me that can start, and I've been truly impressed with him. I've already talked about Mora Jomo, and it's hard not to have a crush on him, uh, you know, as a player because of just how dominant he's been in practice. And a lot of it has come without the pads early on. Only 1 day of pads, like I said earlier, but he's just so quick and twitchy, and he's a little undersized for the position, but it benefits him as a pass rusher. I think the upside actually might be greater than Milton Williams, at least in that area. I don't know about as an overall player, but as a pure interior pass rusher, I mean, sky's the limits for Moro Joma. But yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know what going back to Jeremiah Trotter Jr.'s role is going to be, but I've loved the way he's played in camp. Same with Jahad Campbell.
I love your Trotter Jr. one and your point about the linebackers. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens with these linebackers, given we don't know Dean, but one of the things that saved this team last year was they ended up having uh, great depth at that linebacker position. Zach Bond was obviously the surprise, maybe the defensive surprise of the entire NFL, what he became. I don't think it's a stretch at all to say that he was. And then, and Nakobe Dean wasn't far behind him. Vic said that several times last year. He said Zach. I remember one particular news conference where he said Zach gets a lot of praise and deservedly so, but he said Nakobe hasn't been far behind him. And then they lose him in the first round of the playoffs, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen here? And Oren Burks plays his butt off. But if you remember, there was one game. It might have been the Dallas game. I don't know. It was certainly the Giants game. The starters were Trotter and Oren Burks, and they combined for like 20 tackles and played their butt off in that game. The fact that we were sitting here a year ago and wondering if the inside linebackers were the weakest part of this team, and now we're sitting here a year later, and there's so much depth and so much talent there. And Trotter, I agree with you. I actually asked, and I wish I'd asked the question in a different way because I would have liked to heard Vic's. I wish I had said, Vic, is Jeremiah Trotter capable of being a starter in this league? I wish I had asked the question that way. Further, I think I asked. Can you talk about how much he's progressed? And he just went into, yeah, he's way better than he was last year. But I wish I'd asked the question that differently because I'm with you on that. This guy, you got to remember his athleticism was questioned coming out of Clemson, but his football mind. This is a guy who, I mean, I watched his father play, and his father was a stud, bigger than him. Jeremiah, I think Junior is probably a better athlete than his father was, especially in the later years when the knee surgery started catching up to him. But Jeremiah Trotter Sr., I don't think he actually goes by senior, but the father was just a terrific, bone crunching linebacker who you did not want to be in his area. And your fact, I noticed those coverage plays yesterday too. It's like, wow, look at the way this guy is playing. And and then you make the point about Jahad Campbell. I think, and I didn't even notice, but I saw somebody else tweet out yesterday that Campbell has been staying after practice, or did at least yesterday, and was running some edge rushing things, and maybe that's where he becomes the number 3 pass rusher on this team, and where he gets the bulk of his playing time in his rookie season. There's so many. The defense is so fascinating for a couple reasons. One is it's got the better of the offense so far in camp. Not that that means a whole lot. Um, and I tried to point this out there. One thing about training camp scrimmages is you never know how good a running play is working, because they stop so quick. And if they are working, well, that changes everything about the offense because it changes the way the defense has to play against the run, and it opens up things for the passing game. So you don't know that. But having said that, at least to us watching, it looks like the defense has gotten better than the offense, the better of the offense so far in this camp, and also that there's so many moving parts and to see how they're going to be resolved. That it's made the defensive side of the ball the more fascinating one at this point.
Yeah, and the defense has won, and things can change, and I don't want to put too much pressure, too much prediction out there, but I have a hard time seeing this defense being much worse than last year. They might be worse. They might not be the number one defense, but with the young players that they have on this defense, and yes, there are concerns, at CB2 and edge rusher depth and things of that nature. But I mean, there's so many good players on this defense, and Vic is so good at scheming and he's so good at player development. And that's where we talk about linebacker. I mean, some of these players have been playing really well, like Zach Bond's breakout season, the Kobe playing really well last year, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. coming on this summer, Jahad Campbell already looking pretty much like the part. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that I mean, that Vic, this is his specialty. He loves linebackers. He talked about last summer how important it was to his defense. He was a linebackers coach with the Ravens. He was a linebackers coach with the Saints. When he was the 49ers defensive coordinator, he had a big role in Navarro Bowman's development. I mean, he has a good feel for linebackers in that position and how important it is to his defense, and they've emphasized it, and they've built good depth. And it's the spine of their defense. Zach Bond makes the Eagles' defense run, and Jahad Campbell could be a special player, and they have just really, really good depth, and Vic deserves all the credit as a person who schemes things up and makes life difficult on offenses. But he's also good at player development. He's obviously got a pretty good staff of assistant coaches as well. Bobby King, a coach that a lot of people have talked highly about. In the locker room last year, especially the linebackers, like when Bond and Dean talked about him, they praised him. So Vic deserves a lot of credit, and this defense has been winning, and I think it's going to be really good next season. Let's end today just on a more negative note. I'm not saying that we have to say these guys are down too far where they can't recover from what we've seen so far because it's only been a week. But who are some of the guys that we're just maybe want a little more of? Want to see them play better, or just expecting more, or just frankly have been disappointed by.
Oh wow, that's a much tougher one than wow. Um, I mean, Jalen had some great early days. Hasn't looked as great recently, but he's like I don't worry about him even a little bit. Um, you know, other than Matt Pryor, I do think there's some concerns about what and again, there's only been one day of pads, about what the reserve offensive linemen are going to look like. Again, they didn't need to dig deep into that well last year, but when they did have to go to it, um, Johnson was good for them as a backup last year. He's gone. Um, and now Tyler Steen's a starter. He was a guy they relied on. Who those guys are going to be beyond Matt Pryor, I'm not sure. I was a little bit surprised that we came into camp and Brett Toth was still the backup center. It's at this point he's kind of blurred, mixed in with Drew Kendall. But I'm eager to see there. Trevor Keegan has also mixed in, gotten some snaps at center and at guard. But there's been nobody who's really stood out among that group of reserve offensive linemen at this point. And again, it's really, really, really early. The fact that Zach's gotten hurt is a concern.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. This is funny because I'm watching practice yesterday. It was near the end of practice, and my main goal at that point was not to die. Uh, but I was like, I haven't really seen much from Tristan McCollum, and he's not running with the ones, and most running with the twos and threes mostly. So I haven't seen much from him, and so I decided to watch him on that play, and I forget who the receiver came across the middle.
I think it was
Um,
Darius Cooper. Yeah.
it was Cooper, right? He came across the middle, and McCollum forced a fumble. I was like, okay, well, he's still here. Um, that I think that would be it for me. There's nobody who has really stood out, and I've said really hasn't. I mean, maybe the backup edge rushers also could probably fall into that category where Uche and um, Aziz Ojulari come in as the two guys expected to fill those roles, and neither one of them has really, really stood out yet. Again, I always have a hard time, and I think it's hard for anybody to really say, oh, the edge rushers are standing out because they're never allowed to finish what they're doing, So what their main job is. So that would probably be my list.
That's my number one as well. It's just the edge rush depth. Yesterday, I asked Vic about where it stood. He kind of talked about how it's a wide open competition. I wish I could have reframed my question as well and asked him whether he actually thinks Aziz Ojulari and Josh Uche could be true impact players. He didn't come out and say he feels good about either one, so it's still a feeling out stage. And neither guy has really in particular stood out. I will say Josh Uche had some good rushes yesterday. It was the first glimpse of like, okay, maybe there's something there. But I don't feel great saying either guy's definitely a lock for the roster. And this just backup edgers group of Antoine Powell-Ryland and Patrick Johnson and those two guys um, and Ochuan Mathis. I mean, they're all getting equal shots, and I think it's an area of at least uncertainty right now, and it definitely could become a weakness for this defense after losing Josh Sweat, after losing Brandon Graham. Vic said he feels pretty good about Nolan Smith, who is also out with a concussion, which we'll see the severity of that and how long he's out. And Jalex Hunt, he feels good about as well. And I would say that's fair. But even those guys, you're still taking a little bit of a projection, even though I am high on both. And then the depth after them is a complete unknown. And if they have to make a trade before the season starts, I do think it's going to be an edge rusher, someone of at least pretty high upside young guy, maybe a guy who's not working out for another team that you think can be a pretty good rotational pass rusher because Ojulari has been that before with the Giants. He's been a pretty quality player, but you wonder, with all the injuries that's added up throughout his career, does that eventually catch up, or is he a fit for Vic? I mean, these are just questions that we don't know yet. And Josh Uche hasn't been good in a couple of years. I mean, it's really thin. I mean, like it's a very boom or bust room, and that's my biggest worry right now, and my biggest worry going into the season. I'd like to see more from Keely Ringo because I am high on him, but he's been a little up and down, and I would love to see the consistency. And then the third guy I would like to see the more out of is Kenyon Green. I'm intrigued. Uh, I don't know if he's any good. I mean, he hasn't been good in Houston, but I at least want to see a couple of weeks with Jeff Stoutland. Does he start to turn a corner a little bit? Practice returns tomorrow on Thursday. Friday, there's practice as well, and there's a practice on Sunday. We'll have you covered all 3 days with written content, observations, different stories from the media, access that we get during training camp, and then we'll have a podcast next week, probably leading into the preseason game. Crazy that we're a week away, Bob. Right? We're a week away from the preseason. I can't believe it, but we're right here. And we'll catch you next week. Thank you for everyone for tuning in as always. And we'll see you soon.